Back in June of 2016, the United Kingdom had a referendum vote about whether they wanted to leave the European Union. This was called Brexit. The referendum results were 51.9% of voters saying, we want to go. And that was the beginning of making Brexit a reality. And right when this happened, there were questions about, well, what's the timeline? Is it going to happen at all? How would it happen? What's going to be put in place in terms of trade policy, employment across countries, migration between the UK and the EU. And in the 2.5 years since the vote, there have been a whole bunch of sensible questions asked about, is this all failing? It's been so long. Should there really not be a new referendum ballot to see if the population even still wants to do this, because it was such a slim margin 2.5 years ago? But nevertheless, the timing remains, as of right now, that Brexit is set to happen on March 29th. The latest milestone was, okay, how do we leave? And Prime Minister Theresa May had this plan that was going to be voted on, which would establish the exact process for leaving the European Union. Why do you need a plan at all? Because, as you can imagine, if you leave the EU without a plan in place, it would be a complete and total disaster. So Theresa May puts forward this plan, and yesterday there's a vote taken on it. The Theresa May plan was defeated so soundly, it went down in flames, losing 432 to 202. And it was expected to lose, but not necessarily by this record margin. And what's really important here is that there's a misunderstanding that some people in our audience have. I'm seeing a few emails come in about this. This doesn't mean Brexit is canceled, okay? This means that Theresa May's plan for how to do Brexit has failed. So there's still a deadline of March 29th. There's no serious plan for exactly how it's going to work. So now the next steps are, number one, can they still keep the March 29th date, or does that have to get pushed back? Number two, does Theresa May survive this? Because there's a no confidence vote set for today, maybe going on right now as we're filming today's program. And she may not even survive as the prime minister after this fiasco. So there's a couple different paths forward. One is, at this point, should the entire thing be canceled? Should it go forward, or should it be delayed? Number two, should there be a new referendum ballot, which by all measures I've read, Pat, would now fail? It was such a small margin to begin with. A lot of people in the UK have now seen how it is turning into a complete and total disaster. It's leading to fears about food shortages, as we've talked about, people buying, basically becoming preppers, stockpiling food for what might come as a result of Brexit. So should there be a new ballot, which would, according to many, now opt to remain in the European Union? And then number three, is Theresa May going to survive this? I'm increasingly of the mindset, Pat, that Theresa May is going to have to go.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but I do know that members of Theresa May's team have commented saying that if their Brexit plan failed, they would consider having a second referendum, and many other members of parliament have said things to that effect too. It may be a little bit of an embarrassment to put out a second referendum, and maybe that would come across as undermining the will of the voters, because they did vote for Brexit 2.5 years ago. But if they were to have a second referendum now, with all we know about Brexit and the implications of it, I think it would fail. I mean, I think 60% of the country right now wants to stay in the European Union, and I think there's a good case to be made that you should have that second vote.
Well, they have a couple of options, as you mentioned. Number one is you exit the European Union without a plan in place. That's probably not good for the British economy. People in the UK, as I mentioned, bracing for food shortages. They're buying dried food supplies. It could get really ugly. Option two is you cancel Brexit. Realistically, this is actually the best decision economically and in more or less every sense. But they would look a little silly if after all this they say, hey, you know what, we're actually just not going to do it. But I actually think it should be encouraged to be said, it was a mistake, okay? The decision barely got 50%. In the 2.5 years since, we've realized, or at least more people realize, we've gone from 49% to 60% of the population realizing that it was a mistake. If we voted again, it would fail, clearly. Let's cancel the entire thing. So I am going back to my day one prediction. The day after Brexit, I said, this may never happen. And I don't think it is going to happen. I'm sticking with that. I believe ultimately Brexit will not happen. I'm not willing to bet any money or anything like that, Pat, but I am maintaining my same position. If you had to give us your most likely scenario, does Brexit happen or does Brexit not happen?
I think after this failure, they're going to have the second referendum. The country will decide that they don't want to leave the European Union and Brexit will fail. That's my prediction.
Send us your thoughts. I want to hear from the audience. Also, interestingly, you might remember that the day after Brexit, I believe it was, I'm thinking off the top of my head, American stocks dropped drastically. I think it was like a 3.5 or 4% decline in stocks when the initial Brexit vote happened. Yesterday, after the failure of Theresa May's plan to leave, stocks were up modestly, and it sort of seems as though the reality of what's going on there has been kind of priced into the market. So I think that that's also interesting, which is that even the uncertainty about whether or not Brexit's going to happen and how and what the impact could be, it seems to have been widely priced into at least American stock markets already. Of course, if Brexit is completely canceled, it's less clear what the response would be from the American economy, but that's made increasingly complex now, given the interplay between the European Union, the UK, the US, and Donald Trump's tariffs on a number of different countries, particularly China. So it's going to be interesting. The only prediction I'm willing to make is that I still believe Brexit will not happen. Today's sponsor is Skillshare, and I'm excited to tell you that everybody in our audience is getting 2 entire months of free access to Skillshare when you click the link underneath this video. Skillshare is the site that offers over 25,000 online courses on almost any topic you can imagine: cooking, meditation, photography, video editing, Photoshop, managing a small business, almost an endless list. And whether you're trying to get ahead in your career, maybe you want to learn new skills that will make you better at your job, you might just be exploring a new hobby and you're trying to find new ways to be creative in your personal time, Skillshare's the perfect place to fully immerse yourself in whatever you're trying to learn. I really enjoyed the class on more advanced video editing techniques because it's something I've been wanting to improve at, but have been very busy hosting the David Pakman Show for the last few years. Once again, the David Pakman Show is giving you 2 whole months of access to every single class offered by Skillshare. After those 2 months, if you want to keep your subscription, Skillshare super affordable at less than $10 a month. Get better at whatever it is that you're passionate about, or discover something brand new that you didn't even know that you would love, and join Skillshare's other 7 million users by clicking the link underneath this video.